This is The Top, where I interview entrepreneurs who are number one or number two in their industry in terms of revenue or customer base. You'll learn how much revenue they're making, what their marketing funnel looks like, and how many customers they have.
I'm now at $20,000 per talk.
5 and 6 million.
He is hell-bent on global domination. We just broke our 100,000 unit sold mark.
And I'm your host, Nathan Latka.
I just finished traveling Southeast Asia for 41 days, and I usually always get sick when I travel, and quite frankly, eating is difficult for me. It's hard to find a restaurant, and I'm spoiled in Austin with my personal chef. Well, I took these little packets with me this time, 30 of them, in my carry-on suitcase. They kept me totally healthy with 11 different secret ingredients. You can see them at nathanlatka.com/juice. I'll tell you more later on in the show. That's nathanlatka.com/juice. This is episode 653. Coming up tomorrow morning, you're going to learn how Dale made $100,000 at the very young age of 19. Now he's made $1.2 million from 16 best-selling books and a new app that he's launching. Good morning, everyone. My guest this morning is Maria Gott. She is the president and CEO at the Partnership Fund for New York City, which is the investment arm of the partnership for New York City. In addition to leading the fund's operations, Maria has spearheaded the creation and operation of a number of the fund's strategic initiatives, including the Fintech Innovation Lab, among many, many others. Now, prior to joining the fund in 1999, Maria was a managing director at a company that's now part of Deutsche Bank, providing strategic and financial advice related to mergers, acquisitions, dispositions, joint ventures, and the development of business strategies. Before starting work there, Maria worked at LaSalle Partners in the New York area and for Merrill Lynch Capital Markets in both New York and London. She graduated with an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA from Wellesley College. Maria, are you ready to take us to the top?
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk. So I'm looking forward to this, specifically focused on fintech. But before we go into fintech specifically, this is the first time I've really talked to someone. I believe this is a government role. You're right. You're operating on government funds.
No, we are the corporate sector at the table to try to grow the New York City economy. So Henry Kravis of KKR raised the funds in the late 90s. And he raised them from major corporations in New York as well as individuals. So if you look at our investor list, it's sort of the who's who of private equity as well as the corporate sector. We're structured as an evergreen fund. So the investors put up the money not to make a financial return, but to try to create jobs and expand the economy in New York City. So it's a very unusual structure, and it means we can do things that are a little bit riskier and take a little bit longer than a traditional private sector investor, but always with the sort of cap on of how is it helping and growing the New York City economy. We often work with government, but we are privately funded.
Now, Maria, taking that down to an actual kind of business setup level, I mean, are you structured as a 501c3? Is this a write-off for the investors or no?
No, think of it more as an interest-free loan for 45 years.
Got it. Perfect. Great. Okay, so that's helpful to understand. And then talk about quickly, again, before we get into fintech stuff specifically, talk about kind of returns. You've had some exits in the form of Ink Tank and Billguard and a few others. Does this operate like a typical fund? In other words, are the partners incentivized with the upside?
No. So all those gains just came back to our fund, and we are reinvesting them in people and other investments.
I love that.
So we have the investors' money for 45 years, and if we make returns, it comes back to us to fund new projects.
And then give us the overview here quickly. What year did you launch this in, and how many portfolio companies do you have?
Is this about the fund or the Fintech Lab?
Just the Fintech Lab.
So the Fintech Lab, we've had 39 graduates.
Okay.
We're going into our 7th year. So it is really an elite program where we take in between 6 and 8 companies per year. And I think what is different about this program versus the many other sort of 12-week accelerator or incubator programs out there is this is structured very much as a civic program where we have convened sort of uniquely the market for fintech companies that want to engage with large financial institutions. And the goal of the program is to help reduce the pain and agony of a small emerging technology company trying to get into and get attention from a large financial institution.
You're kind of greasing those wheels.
Yes. So it's a very inefficient process. I liken it to right now to get a small technology company into a large corporate, you need a battering ram. And so we we sort of structure or institutionalize the battering ram. And I guess another way to think about our program is, because it is competitive to get in, it's a shark tank to get in, but once you're in, it's a dolphin tank.
How many people, Maria, are applying per year? And obviously you're only accepting 6 to 8.
So we get about 150, 160 applications.
Got it. And what does that mean, getting in? I mean, are you putting money in for equity, or how's that work?
No, the companies are selected by our financial institution partners. So a company's technology has to rise to the level of addressing a major pain point for a major financial institution. They select the class, and the key value proposition for the companies that get into the program is they get extraordinary access and attention during the 12 weeks from this group of 34 financial institutions.
And for the financial institutions, it's potentially a low-risk way to take kind of high-risk ideas and startups and kind of see how they perform and potentially acquire them down the road.
Yes. I guess the proviso I would say is, in some cases, it's not about an acquisition, it's about using.
Got it.
But I think that the fact that we are this nonprofit civic organization is important, because that really informs the dynamic. So the executives from the financial institutions, and we get very good buy-in at senior levels from typically a CTO or a CIO.
Okay.
They're coming to the table as part of a civic program, partly to help grow the fintech community in New York City and to create jobs. And at a macro level, there's clearly disruption happening in financial services. And we want both the people being disrupted and the disruptors in New York, because from an economic perspective, on a net basis, the city wins if both are here.
And I want to talk more about, like, for example, Forward Lane and how that maybe compares to a Wealth Front for bringing kind of high net worth investment advice down to everybody. But just so I understand you clearly, Maria, that there is, like Forward Lane, for example, you mentioned a fund, but you said you're not putting money into these companies. You're just providing the relationships to these CIOs and CTOs. Did I hear you right?
Correct. Initially, we take a very small warrant coverage in everybody that comes into the lab. Now, we will invest in some of the graduates post-program.
Got it.
But the program, that's separate from the lab. So the lab is all about is laser focused on solving that problem of access to the customer.
Perfect.
And the program is 100% B2B or B2B2C. So we're doing no direct to consumer companies in the program. In all cases, the companies that come in, a large financial institution is a target customer or a target partner.
Got it. So let's dive into one of these. So I think part of your 2016 class was Forward Lane. I got that correct, right?
Yes.
So, okay, great. So help us understand, some of the trends that you're seeing in this space, specific to maybe insight you have access to that we don't, the rest of the world doesn't, because of your relationships with these CIOs and CTOs. What kinds of things are they asking for or looking for, and how did Forward Lane kind of meet that ask? So
consistently since the beginning, there have always been what I call the big three: data, security, risk management, currently known as RegTech, but basically it does risk management. So those three categories have been on the top of the CIO's list since the beginning. What we've seen in the last couple of years, though, is now some new things coming in around blockchain. Disruptive talent management, interestingly, has been a new category in thinking about how to engage their employees, both hiring and once they're hired.
Okay.
Blockchain went through a very interesting cycle where for a couple of years, there was nobody interested in touching it or being publicly associated. This was when it was all about Bitcoin. Yep. Then there were 2 or 3 years there where there was a very high interest in distributed ledger and blockchain. And interestingly, this year, much less interest. And I think it's because everybody's made their big bets on the enabling sort of the big consortium deals that were put together in the last couple of years. So Digital Asset Holdings was in the class 2 years ago. Yep. And that got a big investment round from, again, major financial institutions.
What was that round size?
That was about $60 million that they raised.
Got it.
Then you had the Ethereum, the R3. So I think what's happening, there's a little bit of a digestion happening right now. And I predict that in like 2 years, there will be an increased interest back in more enabling technologies that will help fit around the distributed ledger, but the core systems, people have made their bets.
Makes sense. They've got exposure to those things and they don't really want to increase that exposure.
They need to digest what they've already taken on.
So if you had, I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite child here for a second, which I know is tough, but if you look at your portfolio over the past 7 years under these categories, data security, risk management, and kind of blockchain, when you look at data, which one of your portfolio companies do you think is kind of doing the best job in this area?
I'm going to go back to near the beginning because, enterprise sales take a while. So digital reasoning came into the program with a very interesting technology that is able to read unstructured data, and they were working for the government. And to give you a sense of the company, they were able to read Urdu and Pashto before they could read Spanish.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So they came into the program with very few contacts in financial services and, a very cool technology, but no idea what the product was. And in the program, with the guidance from their mentor financial institutions, what they were advised to do was to focus on compliance because that's where the budget was and that's where the need was. So they've developed a tool for compliance tool for e-communications that's really becoming industry standard in financial services. And so they are signing 6- and 7-figure multi-year contracts with that technology.
Yeah, this is it's basically a private knowledge graph. Now they're headquartered in Tennessee. How did they come across your radar?
Through an errant email.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
It's funny how it works.
All right.
But they are building out their financial services team in New York. So they've created at least 35 jobs in New York.
Yeah, and I think their team size now is between 100 and maybe 200 people. This is based off public data, I think, about $74 million raised. So they're doing well.
Yeah.
Great. And I'll actually reach out to Tim and see if I can get him on the show. But let's go to security now. Who do you think is doing the best there in your fund, in your portfolio?
Centripetal Networks, again, another DC company. You'll see there's a pattern there of defense companies coming, into the program. So they have a perimeter defense technology, and they're getting some interesting traction for people that have a lot of retail locations is where they've gotten a certain amount of traction.
Interesting. Bump into risk management. Who's doing best there?
There was a company we had one company in last year's program called Quarule, and they're still pretty early.
Yep. And describe what they do.
They are trying to automate some of the processing of regulatory tracking. So it's an area where all the financial institutions have made big investments to do reporting, and they're trying to automate some of that. It's a very interesting concept.
Like kind of helping machines try and figure out the meaning of regulations.
Exactly. And more flagging operations against regulations. Take regulation and then automating the process of going through, trading systems to say, this looks like this might have run up against a regulation.
Yep. And then last one, blockchain. Who are you most excited about in your portfolio?
Well, Digital Asset Holdings is doing a great job because they've raised a significant amount of money, and they're involved in some pretty major projects. One in particular they've announced down in Australia, where they are, I think, building a core piece of infrastructure for the Australian Stock Exchange.
And how do you manage? I mean, it sounds like part of your goal is to, again, create jobs in New York. How do you, in a friendly way, pressure folks to try and focus on jobs in New York?
So we let the customers do the talking. And I think people come from out of town, and during the 12 weeks, they make very good contacts. And they really sort of come to realize this on their own, that if they're going to engage in a substantive way, they really need to have people on the ground in New York. And so they end up putting people here. Initially, it is more sort of sales support, but over time, we've seen people add the technology people as well, if they're not here. A couple of people have moved their headquarters here. And because, again, they realize it's worth, it's worth putting the team on the ground here. And then the other thing that we started to notice is we started the program with 10 banks, basically, and we've now expanded to 34 financial institutions. So we've layered in.
And they're all investing. They're putting their money where their mouth is, right? They're putting cash into the fund too, right?
No, not necessarily. Some are already existing investors. We've not raised money since the late 90s.
Oh, wow.
So,
and what was the initial fund size? Do you remember?
About $120 million, our fund.
And you're still operating off that?
Yeah, because it's evergreen, remember? So the money goes out, it comes back. So out of the 120 million, we've actually made 160 million of investments.
Maria, just to make sure I understand that clearly, when you say the money goes out, that it comes back, it comes back. I mean, this isn't debt. You don't require companies to pay it back. You're talking about when they exit, it comes back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah. So it's not structured as debt. Okay.
Not for tech companies. So what we've seen an increase in interest from outside New York, from the financial services sector, wanting to come and participate in the Fintech Lab.
Interesting.
So we've layered in a couple of institutions this year. U.S. Bank joined, Rabobank joined, Hartford out of Connecticut joined, and they are sort of coming with their people, for the most part, that have offices in New York to engage with us. So I think that we take that as a proof point that New York is starting to be seen as a center for fintech, and where you want to come if you're a large institution to see what's happening on the ground that's relevant to you.
Back in episode 498, when I had the CEO of Wealthfront on and asked him kind of how he's developing his product roadmap, his answer surprised me a little bit, in that he said he was looking at a lot of what some of these investors that you have are doing, and kind of traditional kind of asset management and what kind of people are currently doing, and trying to figure out how to automate. And an example he gave is real-time kind of tax loss harvesting, which, a company like a Vanguard or a bigger bank can't do because the savings are too small to put a person on it. Where do you see automated kind of financial services like Wealthfront and like some of your portfolio companies really challenging and eating away at the business models of some of these larger banks?
So that's an interesting question. I think there are some smaller companies that are trying to go after pieces. And what they're finding is, as they scale, the acquisition costs are increasingly expensive. And I think what you're going to see as a trend is those are going to end up primarily either being partnered or acquired by the financial.
Can you name a specific company?
So like LearnVest is a good example, right? So they came as providing financial literacy and education. And it was filling a gap that the financial institutions were not providing. And they were acquired by Northwest Mutual.
Got it.
A couple of years ago. You've got... I'm blanking on the name, the small business lenders. They're the big, sorry, I'm just blanking on the name.
It's okay.
They went into a market that the banks were not servicing, and they came at it with a different underwriting methodology. They were looking at the cash going through the bank accounts of these small businesses. So they have now started partnering with them. Bank Simple is another example that was acquired by BBVA. So I think people like SoFi are the exception to the rule, where you're able to, come in with a new product that an area where the banks are not paying it, are not working for whatever reason, and then expand to be a big company. I think you're going to see most of the companies end up being, when they get to a certain size or asset size, partnering or acquiring with a large institution, because they have the regulatory expertise and they have the distribution power.
Yeah, so these new startups, they can come in and really attack a specific almost point solution, but you're saying where you see trouble start happening is kind of when they try to kind of vertically integrate into other services, acquisition costs rise, and then you have great exit stories like what Alexa did at LearnVest with a $250 million exit to, who was that again? Yeah. Northwestern, right?
Northwestern Mutual, yeah. And then as you get bigger, the whole regulatory costs increase.
Yep. Okay.
And what the large financial institutions have is expertise in regulatory compliance.
So guys, I'm so glad to be back in Austin. I just got back from a major tour of Southeast Asia, went to Sydney, Bangkok, Bali, and Japan. And, I always get sick when I travel. And this particular trip, my gosh, 15 different airports, 20 different hotels. I mean, imagine flushing in airport bathrooms. I was worried about germs and getting all the nutrition I need. I mean, finding a restaurant in Japan, difficult because nothing's in English. So it's hard enough to figure out the train system. But my point is, I had a guy named Drew Cannoli on the show who said, Nathan, if you're concerned about that, take these little green packets with you. You just mix them once per day with water. They'll keep you super healthy. You get all your nutrients, and they'll keep you from getting sick. So I took them. And guys, they worked unbelievably well. I got no sickness, just mixed them with water once per day. They didn't make my water bottles all sticky. That's nice. A lot of these mixers, they make them sticky. It was very clean and smooth, took them once per day, never got sick. So they've got 11 superfoods, and they're perfect if you're not traveling, but you're just on the go from your office to work. So you can check them out at nathanlatka.com/juice. That's nathanlatka.com/juice. Top tribe, there you have them, Maria. Maria, let's wrap up here with the famous 5. These are rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yep.
Number 1, what's your favorite business book? Or just last book you read?
I'm reading a book on the Iranian negotiations with the U.S. around the treaty.
What's it called? Do you know?
It's by, no, I don't remember the name. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll look it up. Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying right now?
Yeah, I think Henry Kravis.
Yep. Good answer. One of your investors, right? All right. Number 3, is there a favorite online tool that you use pretty frequently, whether it's for the fun, the business, or just your daily work?
My City Bike app.
Number 4, yes or no, do you get 8 hours of sleep every night?
7.5.
That's pretty good. And then last question, you have kids, married, single, what's your situation?
7 nieces and nephews.
Wow.
5 godchildren.
Holy mackerel. Okay, great. So last question, take us back, Maria, to your 20-year-old self. What's one lesson that you wish she knew?
Be bold, be bold, be bold.
Top drive. There you have it from Maria. Gosh, be bold, be bold, be bold. She's got many accomplishments under her belt, but she's really leading the change when it comes to helping these startups get involved with some of these larger financial institutions and the value these financial institutions have to offer some of these new concepts as the CEO of the Partnership Fund for New York City, which includes kind of under it the Fintech Innovation Lab that she has spearheaded with over 39 graduates in its 7th year, accepting 6 to 8 companies per year and investing on follow-on rounds to the tune of about 120 out of their $120 million fund. Maria, thank you for taking us to the top.
My pleasure. Nice talking with you.
If you enjoyed Maria today, go back and listen to yesterday's episode with the SnapLogic CEO, where he announces he's raised $136 million, doing over $70 million in annual recurring revenue, and I ask him the obvious question, Gaurav, when are you going public? It would mean the world to me if you guys got any value from this episode, if you would go leave a review on iTunes right now and then subscribe. You know, I hustle like heck to get these episodes out every freaking day for you guys, and trust me, I love it. I would do it with no listeners, but boy, oh boy, it makes my day and it makes my team's day when we see great reviews and get your feedback. So thanks so much. Okay, Top Tribe, I love giving away free money. I feel like Oprah giving away cars, and I have something special for you today. How many of you have heard our super sharp guests talk about success they've had with Facebook and Google Ads? Well, all of you listening right now, yes, if you're listening, you get $100 in free AdWords. Here's how you get it, okay? Again, thanks for listening. Get the free $100 from Google, right, when you sign up with my website host provider, HostGator. Go sign up now to get your free money. HostGator.com/Nathan. Again, that's HostGator.com/Nathan.